this is Drew from Mission RV Services with your Monday Mission RV Services quick tip. So today we are going to be talking about your converter, but more importantly, reverse polarity fuses or fuse on your converter charger. So what's a reverse polarity fuse? If you are a person who takes their battery out at the end of the camping season, which you don't have to, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. You take your battery out for the season or for the winter, you put it in your garage or in your basement, you want to keep it warm, and beginning of the season comes out, you're getting ready for that first camping trip, and this is a call we get a lot of in the beginning of the seasons. The camping seasons in a seasonal place like Michigan, they put that battery back in. They have two black cables because the manufacturers don't always make a red and a black, and they hook them up backwards. So either they put the battery in their battery box backwards, somehow they get those backwards. So the converter manufacturers, they know this is going to happen, and they put something in the fuse panel, or you may see it if you have a separate converter. Right on the converter, they have something called reverse polarity fuses. So what are they and what do they do? So the reverse polarity fuses are exactly what they sound like. If you hook that battery up negative to positive and positive to negative, creating reverse polarity, you are then going to pop those fuses. What happens is that one fuse or two fuses blow out, and that protects your converter from smoking when you put that back in there, and it would be smoking. A lot of times we get the call that, hey, I hooked my battery up today, I just started the season out, and then we'll go over some questions on the phone with our customer and say, well, you know, did you check your reverse polarity fuses? Is your battery hooked up correctly? And a lot of times the answer we get is, of course it is. I know where my battery posts go. Or yes, I checked all my fuses. If it was a fuse, I wouldn't be calling you. So, okay, no problem. We go out, and the first thing I go to is the source. So I go to the battery, I check it. If I see everything is good, then hey, life's good. I'm happy. I have my starting point. I know I'm getting power. Pull out the meter. I check the voltage right there. If I have good voltage and my posts are hooked up correctly, now my next step is I go in and I check the fuse panel, or I look for a separate converter. So sometimes converters are part of the fuse box. If they're part of the fuse box, these reverse polarity fuses will be at the fuse box or the panel where your circuit breakers and your little automotive style fuses are at. If you have a separate converter, which would be more like a bigger box, it could be close to the fuse panel. It normally is. On fifth wheels, it could be up in the front, but you'll want to find where that converter is on your particular model. So my next step after checking the battery and my battery voltage is I'm going to check those reverse polarity fuses. If they're blown, then I know for sure at some point somebody had hooked that battery up backwards. Normally we change those fuses out, and then we can, before we do that, obviously we want to take the connections off the battery, make sure we don't have any 12 volts in the system, check those fuses before we change them, and then we go ahead and we change those fuses out. Once we get those changed out, we go back to the battery, we reconnect it properly, make sure everything is hooked up correctly, check our voltage one more time, then we'll go inside, and now we're going to just make sure at the source, we want to make sure we have a minimum of our 12 volts at the converter. Then we'll go ahead and plug it into shore power, and then we want to see, we'd like to see about 13.4 and 13.6 volts coming out of that converter. And that converter is also a converter / charger, which also tends your batteries. So it keeps those house batteries charged up. So an end is always make sure that I'm hooking my negative and positive up to my battery correctly. And if I do happen to hook it up incorrectly, my first place to check is those reverse polarity fuses. That is one of our #1 calls at the beginning of the season, people hooking the battery up backwards. Now, how can you avoid even doing this is at the end of the season and throughout the camping season, if you have a maintenance ready battery, which means you have 2 caps on your battery or batteries that you can pull off, and you can check your water levels. If your water levels are getting low, take distilled water only, and you'll pour distilled water in and you'll you'll get those topped off. You don't want to fill them, overflow them, but just get them up to the top to where you can see the water and it's above the acid lead wall fins that are in there. So you want to get them right up close to the holes, but not overflowing. Once you do that, put the caps back on. So batteries that are full of water will not freeze because there's always a chemical reaction happening inside of that battery, unless you're in some place, I'll use this as a disclaimer, unless you're somewhere that gets so cold, like we're talking, let's say below 20 degrees below zero. Personally, I don't believe they would do that, but we could look that up. But if you're that cold, then yes, maybe you should take that battery inside and keep it in a warmer spot. But if it's a normal, say a Michigan winter, where you're not consistently way below zero, the chemical reaction that's always occurring within that battery will keep them from freezing. The converter is an important tool in your camper or your RV because the brains of everything that runs in these campers is generated by 12 volt boards. So whether it's a refrigerator running on 120 volt electric, 12 volt board controls the function. If it's a water heater that's running on 120 volt electric, the brains of the operation are 12 volt. So think about that. All the brains in your campers are run on 12 volt. 120 volts the brawn, 12 volts the brain. So when we take our reverse polarity and we put that hook the battery up backwards and blow those fuses, we just killed the brains of the operation. So we need to resuscitate. And 9 times out of 10, when we go on these calls and find out they have 12 volt, either it's a bad converter or they hook the battery up backwards at the beginning of the season, had reverse polarity occurrence, and they blew those fuses. Change those fuses out, we run a few tests with our meter, and life is good again and everybody's happy. But we can avoid this by, one, making sure we're always putting our battery hooked up correctly, positive to positive, negative to negative, and we're double checking those fuses if we happen to make the mistake and do it backwards. I hope this video helped you today. That is one of our, definitely one of our big calls at the beginning of camping season. And if you like this video or you thought it was helpful, please hit the subscribe button below. Hit that notification bell to be notified when we do other videos. And if you have any questions or comment, please drop them below. We can definitely answer those for you. But this has been another Mission RV Services Monday Quick Tip. Hope we were helpful, and have a great week, everybody. Bye.